Welcome to the Inner Athlete Podcast, where we help young athletes, parents, and coaches build strong, resilient, and high-performing athletes for sport and life. I'm Trent and head strength conditioning coach and founder of Inner Athlete. Each episode, we break down the training, mindset, and habits that actually matter, from strength and speed development to injury prevention, confidence, and long-term athletic growth. Whether you're a parent trying to support your child or an athlete chasing their potential, you're in the right place. Let's get into today's episode. Welcome back to the Inner Athlete Podcast. I have a special guest here, Dr. Paul Gamble. I did get it incorrect before and say he was a professor, but hopefully at some stage he will become a professor. We're going to be talking more about a little bit about his career, but more importantly is about his extensive experience in youth athlete development, strength and conditioning, and long-term athletic development and applied coaching practice. So to give you a little bit of background on Paul, he's the founder of Prepared Athlete Training and Health, originally from the UK, spent a bit of his career in New Zealand. Where in New Zealand were you exactly?
We were in the North Island to Auckland. Mainly nice. For 6 years. Yeah.
Oh, perfect. I've got family up in Auckland, okay. And a little bit up north as well. So
okay, very good.
And now living in British Columbia. Paul's worked with the London Irish Rugby Union side in the English Premiership, the National Strength Conditioning Lead for the Scottish Squash and Racquetball for over 2 Commonwealth Games. During his time in Edinburgh, he began working with track and field athletes, then transitioned to New Zealand, working with national level athletes in track and field, and then working with the national team. Moved over to Vancouver in late 2017, take on the role as Director of Sports Performance at a commercial performance and health facility. And now he's an established author, helping high-level athletes and coaches ascend further in their performance. As a father, he's now helping up-and-coming generations to avoid the traps and pitfalls of youth sports for long-term and sustainable success. He's written numerous books that includes sports parenting, negotiating the challenges of the youth sports journey to help kids thrive. So we're going to go into a lot of topics in relation to youth athlete development. But Paul, thank you for coming on board.
Well, thanks for hosting me, mate.
I appreciate it. One of the, when I kind of reached out to you specifically is there were so many parallels for what you've experienced, in your career, and now it's obviously quite evident in Australia. I had spent a little bit of time over in the US in the collegiate system, and there was a lot of parallels that I saw at the collegiate level and then what Australia was experiencing. But we're like maybe 3 to 5 years behind. Usually it's because of population. That's our biggest gap in Australia. But one of the things is everyone is starting to come up now is the early specialisation. And early specialisation, I've spoken to, his name eludes me now, Nathan Parnham. So he's kind of you probably would have come across a little bit of his work and his presentations. He talks about, kids more now are very becoming specialized, just focusing on one sport. So I'd like to get your understanding and your expertise on early specialization and kind of like what are the main pitfalls that a lot of parents and kids fall into with that.
Yeah, I think it's the reason that it's a growing issue is partly financial. There's a lot of money to be made in certainly the youth sports industry, which is kind of what it is now. And there is obviously a profit motive to keep kids for longer, across the year, and to have them do more. And that's probably the big driver. The other one is parents and kids being in a rush and feeling that if they don't do more, they'll kind of fall behind. That I think kids of certainly prior to 12, but even prior to 14, should be more focused on becoming an athlete first, and then we can figure out the sport down the line, really. And the reason it's a bigger issue now is that kids aren't playing as much as well, just in terms of like, general play. And so they don't really have the same level of athletic skills that we used to have just by kind of running on, like jumping on things, pulling off them, just like playing around as kids. Kids don't really do that so much now, and so activities tend to be much more kind of adult led, and you don't really see kids just like running around and figuring out of it so much, which creates kids with really good skills in their sport, but very poor athletic skills in general. And I think we are in a rush to say, like Johnny is a soccer player, or Jenny is a swimmer, when they haven't even really had the chance to even experience other sports yet. So
yeah, and I think from our perspective, we're starting to see that a lot more. We've got a lot of these state and representative programs. They're actually expecting more of the kids to do more training now as well. So I think now they've got school loads, so they'll have a lot of kids play school sports, and usually they'll go into that specific sport. So whether it's our soccer players, they'll play school soccer rather than actually being able to venture and branch out and actually start to pick up some other skills from other sports. I think it's become a very formalized process.
Yeah, I think the other thing too is like sports like national bodies are like trying to compete for other kids, trying to like claim them like sooner, like for their sport. And one of the ways they do that is by having them do more, and the like commitment in terms of like weekly practices and everything else means that there just isn't space like for anything else. And again, that isn't in their long-term like best interest. I think it's in the US, like particularly the current system is a pretty. I mean, I guess it's a good short-term business model, but it's a horrible model for having the needs of kids and parents, and it's a horrible model for talent like development. So national governing bodies in the US are starting to clue in that what is currently happening isn't good for like developing the next generation of pros or whatever. And I think that's the trap that the Aussie system is in danger of falling prey to. And there is still time, which is good. But yeah, it would be good if you could like course correct soon.
Yeah. And then is there any countries at the moment that actually are doing it well? Are they delaying this specialization as part of their, I think there's a few Nordic nations that are actually doing it at the moment. They're actually delaying the specialization for a lot of their high level athletes.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough to compare like countries when you've got different like populations and like geography. But certainly there are countries that are doing it much smarter in general, like the Netherlands and Holland. Like they, I think, are probably one of the better models. Across all sports. I mean, even in I think like even in the recent like Winter Olympics, they were, I think, like third on the medal table, which is, I mean, this is a country that's like below like sea level. I mean, that's extraordinary. And in terms of track and field, even like within that sport, that they encourage kids to do multi events until their late teens as well. So just even within sports, they just do things smarter, I think.
And then I think in your book you mentioned there's specialization, or not so much specialization, but generalization still within the actual sport itself. So, for examples would be like track and field, swimming, triathlon. You could put that in there to some degree as well, but obviously there's a monotony component of that.
Absolutely.
But kind of like give us a bit more, because we work with a lot of swimmers.
Okay. Yeah.
We tend to find that if they find that they end up struggling more longer term if they just focus on one stroke, because obviously the neglect of stroke and overuse and underuse issues start to become a bit more an issue. So kind of like talk about how you can have still generalization still within the sport itself, because I think it's a concept that no one's really heard of or really spoken about specifically.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, totally in sports like swimming, where you're going to, you know, you have to meet kids and parents, you know, where they are. You know, yes, swimmers should be doing, you know, like different sports. But in order to make that work, we would have to like really to reduce the commitment and keep it to like a season, which very like rarely happens. So in terms of making the best of how things are, the one thing we can do is give them a you know diverse practice menu and a diverse like training menu as well. And so again in track and field and in swimming, you know, there are the kind of the range of different strokes and the different events like within the sport. So even if you can even, there are opportunities to get that you know the variety like within the sport, and also so then how you know practice and how you train. You can give them a you know a range of different things to develop a broader kind of movement base too. The biggest problem we have is like too much of the same thing too soon. And so the more we can like get away from all of those like three things, i.e. like specialize later, to reduce the commitment and the volume, and also to give them a broader movement skill set with more diverse activity. All of those are good things.
Yep. And then because in your book you talk about the buffet, not binge, like you mentioned before.
Yeah.
You just want to kind of just, I guess, talk about that more in practice specifically.
Yeah, I think, I mean, this is kind of a tough one to kind of like connect dots, but like early on, like the idea is you want to give kids a real, you know, broad sampling of, you know, just to discover what sports there are, and you know, to what really kind of grabs their interest and see what they have an affinity for, but also to give them a blend that kind of like ticks into all of the like the different foundational movement skills. So think about locomotion, like jump, land, you know, like throwing a catch, nippling an object, you know, like so with soccer or with an implement. So like striking sports like field hockey, racket sports, you know, the whole like, you know, gamut of the different general or like foundational motor skills. You want to try and, you know, take them all off really, to give them that diverse and whole you know athlete development experience. So that's, you know, that's kind of in the early years, and then from then on, the aim is to kind of continue that, because those foundational motor skills are the kind of the building blocks for all the sports skills too. And so if you want to have good skills in whatever sport you're doing, then you need to have those, building blocks really kind of honed and good to go, because you can adapt all of those things, and it makes you a better player in whatever you do.
If you're getting value from the Inner Athlete podcast, make sure you like, subscribe, and leave a review. It helps more parents and young athletes find the right guidance and keeps this podcast growing. Back to the show.
Yeah, and then do you have like idea? So, say for example, we get parents. Obviously, parents are just like, I just want to take my kid and just let them enjoy or do whatever it is. Do you have like a selection of like a small list of sports that you would actually suggest the kids to actually participate in at the early ages? Maybe that that 4 to 8 years old, before they can start to sample some other sports moving forward. Like if you had your ideal world, unicorn choices, whatever it may be, what would they be?
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly swimming, because interested in terms of aquatic skills, but also water like safety as well. But then like gymnastics is a great movement, like learning experience in terms of like general motor skill development, like coordination, to body awareness, all those good things. I would throw in track and field, just because it has all of the elements of run, jump, throw, and there is a program here that is called Sport Ball, and it's each week you do a different ball sport, and sometimes you could get to like sample all the like a range of different ball sports do. So I mean, like that's what I have my son doing, and he's 4 at the moment. So yeah, to stuff that at that age and stage, you want that real variety that like takes on top of those different boxes basically.
Well, no, that's the same advice I give to a lot of my parents, a lot of the parents that are with the kids that we work with. It's like if they've sampled gymnastics, like I've got one girl, she plays, she's only 16, but she's now training with the senior women's soccer team, and she has a gymnastics background, so she's able.
That's really useful, huh?
Yeah, body awareness as a control is phenomenal. We've got a swimmer. She's, I think she's for her age, I think she's like top 5 in the nation. Gymnastics background as well. It's like body strength is ridiculous. Obviously, a heavy requirement for the sport as well.
But even just like the ability to fall safely and to roll. I mean, even those types of things. Those types of skills. Gymnastics is pretty tough to beat in terms of like giving you those movement pieces.
This just came to my mind. What about grappling sports? Because we're seeing a huge rise in contact sports for women. Is that starting to become a bit more more useful for a lot of younger athletes to actually incorporate at some point?
Yeah, like grappling sports. I mean, because we talk about like donor sports, so like sports that prepare kids and others for and develop skills that are that do transfer really kind of well into other sports, and like definitely grappling sports would fit that. There's some similar reasons, like in the sense that you get really good body awareness from being in like different positions, but also so having the kind of the additional like tactile element of having like the resistance of another human, and figuring out things like leverage and how to manipulate momentum and those types of things. So yeah, definitely it can be a tougher one to get into, but like more and more sports like judo, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, who are gearing their programs to young kids, which is good, I think.
Yeah, and then what we're starting to see in Australia is like Australian rules now. A little bit in soccer is they're starting to get like grappling coaches in to actually understand their body awareness and control and how to manipulate their opponent, but also be able to move themselves in space, how to combat when they are in certain situations as well. From my background playing rugby league, I was able to take elements of that and actually implement that into Australian rules. Be able to, how to tackle, create that leverage. But even with my experience with coaching Australian rules players and also how to create space is the same, very similar principles that are used in soccer as well. So I'm teaching a lot of the younger soccer players how to create that space rather than just, trying to muscle your way through, being really smart on how you position yourself.
Yeah, and I think like the reason it is helpful to do a range of like different, even like within the all sports, the idea of like figuring out where the space is, like where opponents are, where teammates are, even like figuring out they like a triangle. Like a triangle of like teammates can actually like get around a lot of things, and that's the same in football, soccer, same in basketball, same in rugby as well. All of them are kind of invasion games, but also so evasion games too. So the evasion skills and the agility skills tend to be best developed, doing relevant things really. We don't tend to like coach them very well, and it's so you can coach the elements of the movements, but in terms of the more perceptual elements, you kind of have to do it, you have to just like play a bunch. And also even kids playing like chase games, right? I mean that's what we used to do as well. Also relevant skills.
Yeah, and then that actually goes to the next point is, I guess, the training load and free play element. So you discuss in your book that this like sweet spot of the ratio of how much training load or just like structured training to free play of this 2-to-1 ratio. Kind of how did you come to that conclusion? And then how does it actually play out with like an example training schedule for someone who's got a teenage kid?
Yeah, I mean that like ratio was purely based on the injury data, but it holds up pretty well, I think, and definitely now I think we have to create and facilitate those opportunities for like free to play, particularly here. Like I don't say kids just like groups of kids just on a field like playing like whatever, soccer, whatever. It just doesn't happen unless it's like a formal coach-led practice. You don't really see that. I think it's probably very Aussie, but even the more that we kind of add in terms of like structured, improvised sessions, the less space and time we leave for like kids just to play on their own. So that I think where we need to get to is really emphasize quality, so we can be more kind of time efficient. And currently we have like a brute force and volume model where we used to have kids do more and more and more, which kind of looks like it works and until it doesn't, and it all that ends up doing is it kind of gets them to their ceiling quicker, really, which shouldn't be the aim. The aim is to kind of raise the ceiling, and like not like just get them there sooner.
Now, I guess with parents and athletes and coaches just wanting to get them sooner, is it more just like we're in like kind of panic stations that we need to push it a lot faster, or is there some sort of like other motive in order to try and cram in as much as we can, expecting these kids to become at the top of their group or whatever it may be? Are we just
Yeah.
expecting way too much, or are we really just lacking the understanding of, you know, what's happening with these kids pre-adolescence during the peak high velocity and post high velocity?
Varies. I mean, I think the reasons, like, vary. For the most part, parents just want to give their kids the best opportunity, and they want to, as far as they can, that they want to do all they can to, you know, give them like what they need to do well. I think where things tend to go astray is when they see like marketing, like saying, you can have these, you can kind of hack it, and you can, take these, like, you can get this serotonin, you can accelerate development, or it's kind of the fear based, if you don't do this, you're gonna like fall behind. If you don't do this, it's a extra camp, or off season like training or whatever, or it's just like a herding thing whereby the other parents have their kids to sign up for more and more. You think, like, I guess I have to as well. And at this stage, it takes real kind of knowledge and faith to do something different. And hence that's why I wrote the book and put out the content, so you can actually give to parents the who are just trying to do the right thing, give them the knowledge and the assurance to do something different.
Yeah, no, because the one thing that I've noticed in Australia is, obviously, it's a lot of coaches want to do more and more and more, but they're not actually measuring the progress. And for us as being strength and conditioning coaches, all right, we want to measure progress. Are we making progress? Yes, no, why not? And I think that's probably the other thing you mentioned in your book, is more the steady approach to actually making progress. Where I've worked with high level swimmers, and they're still high level, is because their approach was not so much about, I'll use swimming as an example, making a 4-second PB as a 13-year-old. I'm like, that may happen from time to time, but it should not be the standard. And they kind of set the past to be the present of what they need to achieve moving forward, rather than actually making it more incremental progress over time, and actually finding out where their gaps are, and then specifically being able to address those for whatever reason. So if it is, a lack of recovery, a lot of junk volume, per se, from training, it's like, all right, sounds like your kid probably just needs a bit more sleep. So this is where I think, I guess, like someone like yourself, whether you do like consulting, or like I do a little bit of consulting with the parents as well, is just like finding out what are the gaps at the moment, why aren't they improving, or why they are in this state specifically. Identify those, I guess, red flags essentially. It's like, how are we going to address those? Let's see how it happened, or how things change by those implementations over the next 3 to 6 months. And then more what you'll find is the kid will actually make far or better progress consistently. Not only that from an achievement perspective, but psychologically as well. They're going to feel a lot more stable. And I think this erratic nature of always trying to chase wins, it's almost like addiction, essentially. You want to work hard.
Yeah.
You have just listened to the Inner Athlete podcast. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date with the release of weekly episodes. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram to get great tips on all things youth athlete development and youth mentoring.